Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Are there other questions or comments from board members? Yes, Mr. Brown.
Very briefly, having attended that meeting, and I too was very impressed, especially with the way it was organized and presented. I think it was very effective. Identifying those items that are potentially capital and separating those out is also very useful as we go forward. And I too think that we need to think about this as a board and think about strategy for how do we best include the community in the process and include a diverse segment of our community to participate and get to understand these numbers that we're looking at, the projections into the future, and how do we address those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Board Member Peretti?
And this is just more of a comment to echo that. We get out in the community, we talk to a lot of folks. I think it is very prudent of us to set that platform so we do have the ability to talk about these options and possibilities in a more appropriate fashion. And so I would urge that we move very, very quickly on it. Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Hudson.
Just one other thing I want to point out. I think board members saw this. For community members who may go to the website, look at the materials we reviewed. It isn't just there. This has been called an aspirational budget. It has 5-year planning to it. There are goals tied to each of those spending recommendations. And so, this is developing into very much a data-driven budget, which is the goal, and well beyond what most school districts are doing today for accountability for these numbers. It doesn't mean we're going to do this. It's a place to start, and it's a place for the board to evaluate and the community to evaluate. But I just suggest to make sure that if you do look at that, note those goals. And then as we would move numbers, we have to ask as a board, what happens to those goals?
Thank you. Board Member Gibbs?
Yes. So my question is for Chair Hudson. Are you going to recommend a public engagement component to this process with dates for us to go out and explain it? Or are you just going to, I just want to know what the recommendation is to achieve what you said and both what you said in terms of exposing it to a more diverse audience.
I think that my recommendation, the recommendation would be that the Finance Committee will look at what the financing options are and discuss pros and cons of each, and then bring those recommendations back to the board. I think then it would be for the board to lead a public engagement process. So, for example, if there's a levy millage committee appointed, that would be a board committee as opposed to like a subcommittee of the Finance Committee. Does that answer your question?
That answer, I just didn't know if I heard public hearings coming down the pipe or
I
just
think
a regular board.
Certainly, so the 2 meetings in April will be public, but not as to go out and vet. This is really the first one, especially I think, will be, to look at those various financing options, and then to and that's the various types of bond measures, levy millage options, and if we did everything, if we put it in all in one type of measure versus other measures, and we are fortunate our treasurer has great experience and years of experience with many of those financing alternatives. So I think we can have a good discussion about that, and I think then the Finance Committee will just send those recommendations up to the board from that discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Is when April, are we looking at seeing the personnel aspect of the aspirational budget as well? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Treasurer, would you like to offer?
I was going to comment on, just so we're all on the same page timing-wise about events that will be upcoming. We're anticipating that the first meeting of the Finance Committee in April will see that personnel piece rolled up into it. We'll see not only the budget information that you've already seen, in that budgetary format, but you'll also see it, how it impacts the 5-year forecast. I'm sure there will be lots of questions. We can talk about different funding mechanisms at that point. There's a second meeting scheduled because we've learned over time that we always need a couple meetings before that 5-year forecast comes to the board. And then the board will see the 5-year forecast for the first time officially at the first meeting in May. And by the second meeting in May, you'll have to adopt both the appropriation resolution for FY17 and the 5-year forecast. All during that time, underlaying this or alongside of this is that whole discussion, as you look out and as Board Member Hudson pointed out, how you will choose to fund the gap. That discussion will be ongoing. So at some point, the adoption of the 5-year forecast as well as the appropriation resolution doesn't mean that the discussion about funding has to be finished, but it certainly has to be ongoing because we can't continue on that path, as you'll see, without making some decisions relative to that. So just understand that presentations to the committee in April, presentations to the board in May, and an ongoing discussion about what do we do about funding, whether it's operational or capital, and the various options we have. And we'll make sure that those are available to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, especially with Mary Jo's comments and with the committee that I think needs to be formed, a community study of the finances and suggestions, and I think it does need to be broad-based. I would encourage us to try to, and I agree that it's not a finance committee subcommittee, but that it is something that the board helps to create. But I would encourage us to try to set that up so it is as independent from us as possible, so that it's truly our community, our voters, our taxpayers, who are taking a good look at the books and able to participate in the recommendations about funding mechanisms and sources, as well as on how best to address the anticipated need that we're going to have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Superintendent?
So, President Baker, I'm trying to make sense of all the contributions from the board on this topic. On one hand, I believe I hear the financing of the gap is one consideration once the board lands on, or maybe concurrent with the board determining what they will approve in terms of an expenditure request. On the other hand, I'm hearing a very broad-based engagement around the budget itself. And I'm wondering if you're hearing the same thing I'm hearing, because it makes me a little anxious to think that we're going to engage in a large engagement process around the budget. As representatives and as a finance committee, I believe you do a good job honoring what your constituents' beliefs are, and we've developed a budget and presented. I can't with a good conscience sit here and say that we're going to have time to do a full vetting of this in a broad-based community engagement process, particularly while we're doing an ad hoc committee broad-based engagement around facilities master planning. So I'm just trying to understand so I can think about whether to advise that we do have resources, we'll need additional resources to implement the will of the board, because that's a very robust request.
Board Member Hudson, would you like to provide some clarity on what that recommendation may be out of FAC?
I think I'll go back. So we will have, I think it's more about looking at with the aspirational, with the budget where it is. We will have to decide not only, the revenue side and the expense side. So as a board, I think it's about what's the range we feel like the community will support? And certainly I think that's a board function. And then based on that range, then it would be about bringing together some folks from the community to help us evaluate that. That's what I've understood in the past was done through what's been called a levy millage committee. So to evaluate that, so I don't think it would be a large like the vision tour or something like that. That type of toured public engagement. I think we'll have to figure out how to do this as a board. I mean, that would be my recommendation, so that it's targeted. But we need to evaluate quickly. What would the community possibly support in both from the outcomes, what we're talking about, and the revenue that would need to be raised and the method of. So if it's raising taxes by a certain number of mills, what does the community think about that? Likewise for bond authority, that also has spending, that has implications as well. So what would those be in helping us evaluate that?
And that's what I understood the first part to be. I was wondering if I was hearing, though, we're going to do a broad-based engagement around the actual expenditure request. Because we've already prioritized that aspirational budget, we know that if the community, through this alleged millage committee, comes back and says we can support this, then we know if that aspirational budget, we can only do these priorities. So I think we're on the same page there.
Yes. And I thank you for saying that. I think that was a piece I was going to otherwise raise, that concurrent with what we're dealing with. We did discuss that the budget does have, what's been proposed to us does have priorities. The Finance Committee has not evaluated those in any way, but we did ask about that. Right. I think as we go forward with the forecast, our current forecast will show that, we certainly can't do anything near what's been proposed in that budget. And so we will need to do, I think, concurrently, is identify what could we do if we had no additional funds coming in. What does that mean for the district? And so we do have a lot to do in the next month in doing that. And I think that's educating ourselves and then the community. But then also, that's where I think that's what the levy millage committee would have to understand and help us make those choices.
Thank Mr. Brown.
And to provide you some peace, and I don't mean anything much different than what MJ had to say. I just want to see that not large committee, not broad-based, but focus on a small group, but with some independence of people that have some expertise in looking at this, that can review it and say, yes, this all makes sense. The Columbus School Board has gone through this process thoroughly, and just get some additional independent expert eyes on it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from or for the treasurer? The last thing I'll ask is please note the arrival of Mr. Peretti.
I did. I believe I have the time correct, at approximately 5:52 p.m.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Appreciate it.
All right, if there's nothing else.
You're more than welcome.
Nothing else from or for the treasurer. Thank you very much, everyone, for that robust discussion. Let's move on then. And Madam Internal Auditor, have you anything to share this evening?
Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole. Just briefly, the Audit and Accountability Committee will be meeting next Thursday, March 24th, at room 330, at 3:30 in the Cabinet Room.
Thank you very much. And Audit and Accountability Chair Hudson, have you anything you'd like to share out of the committee tonight?
I think only I'll just flag that for the board that we will likely be seeing our financial audit from the Auditor of State shortly. We would anticipate that. We'll cover that in the next, whenever that comes out, the following Finance or Audit and Accountability Committee, we will be reviewing that report and any comments. So, we should be, at this meeting, finishing up the payroll audit as well. That's been good discussion around that, so
Very
more
good.
to come from that.
Thank you very much. The chair will now entertain a motion that we approve and adopt the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right. The first thing I'd like to do is call out a safety resolution that the board will be contemplating for adoption this evening. And I'll start by saying that spring break is fast approaching for our students, a time when our city's children and young adults won't have the daily structured safety of the school buildings and classroom activities to rely upon. We need our partners in the community and at City Hall, from neighborhood organizations, recreation and parks, nonprofit providers, and local businesses, all to help us ensure our students have a safe spring break by offering activities and support during the 10-day break. And we hope these 10 days will just be the start of a year-round effort to further empower the communities and local organizations around our schools to help extend our safe zones and reduce incidents of violence while increasing additional supports and intervention opportunities for all students. We're here to be a partner for these 10 days at spring break and every day before and after, because our students and the limitless potential they each possess are our city's most valuable resource. Together, we can help our young people have access to the resources, support, and guidance they need to learn in a safe, effective environment, develop their talents, live healthy and productive lives, and reach for a bright future that they so richly deserve. So having said that, I'd like to say the resolution that board members are about to read has been developed over the past few months. A lot of hard work has gone into it from staff and from board members. I want to thank everyone who was involved. And although this is on the consent agenda, we won't vote on it separately, but as a part of that consent agenda, because of its importance, we thought that we would read it. And we're going to do something we haven't done before. Each board member is going to read a part of the resolution. So I would like to call on Mr. Peretti to lead us off.
Whereas violence has touched nearly every community in the United States over the last decade, including Columbus, and whereas public schools throughout our nation, including Columbus City Schools, remain one of the safest places for our children to be, and
Whereas all people have a basic human need to feel safe, and when students or adults at work do not feel safe, whether at home, in class, or in their local neighborhoods, it undermines learning, teaching, and healthy development. And whereas the Columbus Board of Education has invested significant resources to create safer zones for our students, teachers, and staff within our buildings and at school-related activities, including the dedicated efforts of our Office of Safety and Security, a 2-decades-long partnership with Columbus Division of Police, and ongoing safety training for teachers and staff built around promoting positive behavior among students. And
Whereas our district's greatest safety resource is the high level of trust and respect that our safety teams, teachers, and school administrators have built with our students and families within our schools and across our neighborhoods. And whereas the greatest safety challenges confronting our students today are more likely to be found beyond our school walls, outside regular school hours, or during long breaks from school. And
whereas our community, our state, and our entire nation are searching for the most effective means to curb violence, especially gun violence, that impacts our young people in their own neighborhoods. And whereas the residents of Columbus have joined in the growing national dialogue about reducing the violence that has taken a heartbreaking toll on so many young people throughout our country. And
whereas to address our local safety concerns and reduce the violence impacting our students, parents, and their families at home, it will take civic leaders, law enforcement, faith leaders, neighborhood-based organizations and service providers, businesses and residents in the communities surrounding our schools working together. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Columbus Board of Education pledges to strengthen its partnerships with civic leaders, law enforcement, community groups, and local, state, and national policy leaders to promote and support comprehensive, coordinated, and collaborative strategies to prevent and reduce all violence in our community, especially gun violence. And
be it further resolved, the Columbus Board of Education recognizes that ending the epidemic of violence will take more than just one voice and more than one plan. And while we pledge to do our part to ensure the safety of our students and staff, we call upon others throughout Columbus to work together to reduce violence and improve the safety of our community. And be it further resolved, the Columbus Board of Education strongly supports efforts such as the #Safe Spring initiative to be launched this month in partnership with the City of Columbus to empower the communities and local organizations around our schools to help extend our safe zones and reduce incidents of violence while increasing additional supports and intervention opportunities for all students.
And I would like to announce or remind everyone that there will be a press conference tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. at Lyndon McKinley High School to talk about an exciting partnership between the city and the school district relevant to this particular resolution. And I might like to offer, if there's no objection, the opportunity to Director Johnson to say a few words.
Thank you, President Baker. Tomorrow there will be a press event at Lyndon McKinley High School from 9:30 to 10 o'clock. Mayor Ginther, Council President Klein, other members of council, and the mayor will be there to talk with young students and to get their input on ideas and strategies for a long-term goal. And then at 10 o'clock, there will be a press event where Dr. Good will speak, Mayor Ginther will speak, George Walker of the South Linden Area Commission, and the mayor will speak. And so I really appreciate everyone's support to pull this event together, especially Alicia Gillison, Maria Stockard, and Scott Warner. And I know she had some other members of her team, but we really appreciate the partnership that we have with Columbus City Schools.
Thank you, Director Johnson, and thank you, colleagues, for your hard work on crafting the resolution. And Board Member Hudson.
Thank you, President Baker. I want to thank Dr. Good and his team for all the efforts through the year, and for Director Johnson. When I've had the ear of council members or the mayor or other folks, I tell them, we, whether it's the newspaper, but we get messages and find out kind of almost immediately whenever there's been an act of violence against one of our students. And it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking that every week, almost, it seems that I get a notice that a child has died to some pretty significant violence in our community. And it has to stop. It has to, and we can't just chalk it up to being in an urban district. We can't settle for that. And so I appreciate the city stepping forward with their, it's a safety measure, and I think we do a great job of these incidents aren't happening at school, but it's about our community. So, but it is, I don't think we certainly we can read a resolution, but we can never say enough. We can never say enough that this is ridiculous, but it just can't get, those children that died like a week ago, 5 and 7-year-old kids getting shot. There's no reason for that, and young kids are doing it. There are kids shooting kids, and that we just, as a community, have to say that's enough. And I'm glad that there are folks working so hard to help make that happen.
Thank you, Board Member Hudson. Mr. Brown?
No, I couldn't agree more. I feel very strongly that we need to demonstrate continued leadership, that I'm very happy to support the mayor's efforts and his focus on having a safe spring break, but it's very important that we demonstrate that what we're looking to do is improve safety for not only our students, but our teachers and staff, and for our entire school community. And not just during spring break, but beyond that. And always, we've been working on this for a few months now, and our approach needs to be comprehensive, it needs to be ongoing, it needs to be serious, and we need to figure out ways that we can take action, even though the overwhelming majority of this violence occurs outside our school walls, not on our buses. But, we need to do our part, demonstrate some leadership, and encourage other leaders throughout the community to step up as well. One of the surprises to me, I guess, since January of serving, and even a little bit before that, paying attention, was the large numbers. I mean, every week, sometimes several times in a week, we're hearing about some deaths by shooting of students or family, and it is unacceptable, and it's clearly something we need to work on. So thank you.
Board Member Brown. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, and to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, it is very important. And we also think that we should note that this is also about safety. It's about internet safety. It's about, neighborhood safety. It's about anti-bullying. It's about keeping our kids safe. And that's from all forms of violence and aggression. And just because we're holding it at Linda McKinley, it does not mean we do not see the violence all over this city, on the west side, on the east side, the far north, the south side. We just have to have it somewhere. And we are endeavoring to challenge all of it, no matter where you live. Every student and family should have a safe place to go to school, to go to work, and to worship. And our goal is to take ownership of our part of it, and as a board, stand united in supporting the amazing work of our safety and security team, of Chris Ward and his team, and all of the things that you may see and all of the things you probably don't, that helps us curb and to prevent additional violent acts, whether it's our guidance counselor and our social work team, Cheryl Ward's team, and the amazing crisis response that she sends in, and under Dr. Good's leadership and Ms. Gillison, and all of the things that all of our staff do to help keep everyone safe. So I'm glad that we'll be able to do it, but most importantly, we have to take action within our lane and in our role, and make sure that our policies support that continual effort to give you the flexibility to do everything in our power to keep our kids safe.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. And I will now ask the superintendent to offer any thoughts he may have.
First, I'm sorry.
You're probably going to say the same thing I'm going to say.
Board Member Reyes?
The only thing I wanted to reiterate or add, I'm not going to say what everybody already said, is that I want to reiterate that most of our kids will tell you that the place they feel safest is in our buildings. So I don't want that to be lost, that, this is not saying that their kids are safe. So I don't want everybody to go out and start texting and saying, at the board meeting, I heard every board member say that our kids, we're getting an email every day about some kid getting, yes, that is true, but please do not go and believe that all of those incidents are occurring in our buildings. We have all been to our buildings, and our kids will tell you, some of the places I feel the safest is inside these walls. So I want to just make sure that that is not being lost in our messaging.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
President Baker, you're right. That is what I was going to say, a reminder that we have not had the fatalities occur within our schools, and we've had great success with our safety and security, our school resource officers collaborating with the city's police department on the ABCs of CPD, engaging all of our high school students, middle school students, and acting and supporting the positive behavior intervention strategies. There are numerous efforts that continue. We've had a great partnership. I will tell you, for a meeting with our student ambassadors, and Ms. Gillison can affirm to you, they're tired of us talking about it. They're tired of the community coming together and having forums and yet another roundtable. They're saying, show us what we can do. So one of the key messages you're going to hear tomorrow is let the cat out of the bag, is we're calling on the community to help us populate on the websites a place where people can go to know what's available to them that's also safe over spring break. They want to know what you have to offer. They're not interested in us continuing to admire the problem, and we seem to do that quite well in this city. So it's time for people to roll up their sleeves and start offering programs out of their organizations, out of their parishes, what have you, out of their parks and recreation centers, out of their schools. And So the call is for everyone to do their part and help with this heavy lift to help make certain our children are safe. To that end, I want to also take this opportunity to, if the board president is willing, to have Tracy Johnson, the Columbus Education Association president, approach the podium and talk about their initiative that's also occurring. Is that, thank you.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, Superintendent Good, Director Johnson. I'm probably going to tear up here. This initiative, this issue is near and dear to me because every day my members work with our children. It is disheartening when one of our babies is lost. It is disheartening when we have to dispatch a crisis team to our schools to serve as our students and our staffs who are hurt and are brokenhearted by what is happening in our communities. I had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Ginther, and the first thing I said to him is our communities are in crisis, and we need to do something. And so I began to talk with my team at the Columbus Education Association to say, what can we do to get this on the forefront? Because I felt no one was really talking about it in any type of way that was going to bring about the change that was needed. And so the Columbus Education Association is having a Community in Crisis Summit on Wednesday, March 23rd, from 6 to 8, where we are gathering the people in our community to not only talk about what's happening in the community, but also to brainstorm what they feel are ideas for solutions, their ideas around who is responsible and what resources are available to our community. We need to think about this in a different way. Violence stems from poverty. Violence stems from lack of opportunity. And if we don't do something systemic to change the poverty in our community, to ensure that our families have a living wage, that they have stable and affordable housing, then we're going to continue to see the violence that plagues our communities. And so that's what this conversation is about. It's not about glorifying what's happening as far as the violence, but it's really thinking about ways that we can make systemic changes in our communities to better our communities, to stabilize our communities, stabilize our families, and give our children the opportunities to grow up and become productive citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Yes,
think
sir.
one of the most important things, of the many important things that President Johnson said was about the gaps. And I continue to say the greatest gap in our community is a belief gap, a belief that they deserve better, a belief that they have the skills, the resources in their midst to create a pathway out of poverty, to create a better future for themselves and their children. And when we stop looking at children as the unit of change and start focusing on the family and helping them understand that, in fact, they too have a way out of poverty and deserve a better life, then we'll change the conversation around the dinner table at home. And until we do that, we're going to continue to be plagued by a lack of efficacy in this community. And it's time to change that. And the conversations are going to help. But I'm telling you, the kiddos are saying, so show me what you have to offer. What do you got that I can do instead of this? They're tired of the talk. I'm certain you will hear that tomorrow morning because I know many of the board will be there as well to engage in the dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Seeing no other comments related to that resolution, thank you again to everyone for your work on that, and look forward to partnerships developing and burgeoning and continuing to grow. Let's then consider any other items of legislation on the consent agenda on which there are questions or comments. Hearing none. Oh, Mr. Brown.
I do. With respect to the request for travel expenses, and I want to be real clear that this is not directed to Ms. Gibbs. It would be the same comment I would make regardless of what board member was proposing to travel out of state at a cost of $2,300. I think that I'm mentioning it now because this is the first time I believe that this has come up, I guess on my watch, since I'm a member of the board. Our role and the way I view, my role, and I think all of us, we're good stewards of our precious tax dollars and of the public trust. I think that with respect to out-of-state travel, especially, overnight and this kind of cost, that we need to both set a good example. We have more than enough work to do right here at home and great resources to help us with whatever in-service is needed. And importantly, while the issue has been raised a few times and touched on a few times by members of the board, we've not yet developed any guidelines, any policy, any strategy, or identified, what's going to be what's going to be done with the information. How do we decide what travel does and does not make sense? How that information is going to be brought back for the benefit of the entire board and of administration, and really, how does it benefit our kids? Because our focus really needs to be there. So until we've done that and have agreed on those mechanisms, I'm not going to support the expenditure and going forward with respect to any travel of this nature.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other questions or comments on any other pieces of legislation? Ms. Gibbons.
Sure, thank you. I have another question, but just in response to that, and I thank you for your perspective, and I pretty much anticipated that. The 76th National School Board Annual Conference will take place April 9th through 11th. It is a part of a national dialogue among national school board members to explore the public policies that school board members are in control of to help shape and move their districts forward, to achieve academic excellence in both governance and in supporting their administrative teams. This year, as a part of the Council of Urban Boards of Education, there is a specific track upon which I endeavor to attend to look at school board and superintendent partnerships, which is a specific track. They explore board and superintendent relations, team building, the do's and don'ts of superintendent contracting, superintendent evaluation, and some other tracks around student achievement and accountability. Most importantly, the sessions, the role of the school board in accelerating student achievement through whole system change, setting the course for the future, what board members need to know about technology trends. A considerable amount of our 5-year aspirational budget includes expenditures and purchases of iPads, Chromebooks, and technological advances. But we do not have, as you say, we have great work, but do not have the tools to understand what our role is in ensuring how top-ranked districts are going to utilize that technology, and how do we, as a board member, understand how we're going to facilitate their implementation in that vision. Also, the other session is improving the value of superintendent evaluation in your district. We have an amazing superintendent, but I don't know that we have models for growth and the best superintendent, treasurer, and internal evaluation tools that we have from cutting-edge districts who have high-performing teams. So led by the Texas Association of School Boards and Dr. Robert Duran, they're going to help board members go through that process and learn how to build those great tools and models that help us work together. And finally, the last session is the other side of the student report card, what it is and why it matters. Positive school climate, social emotional learning, caring and connected schools, and strategic community engagement. Those are the 4 sessions that I think if you're willing to listen to the information when we come back and we commit to the work and using the data and the resources of those sessions will help us become a high-performing board and will help us continue to be partners in the academic and achievement and growth of this district as we endeavor to have the spirit of success. We have great work, but I don't think we have great tools. And what you need to be an effective school board member are tools and those strategies and that information and data that helps you as a school board member. Superintendents and staff, they have professional development. But unless we have tools to say, we have a policy to help support our teachers to stop violence. We have a policy and we understand how to help poor and working poor families succeed. We know how to create policies to help Black and Latino and students of color succeed in large urban districts. You show me a local tool, we'll do them. I'm at the Ohio School Board Association. I'm at Council of Great City Schools. I'm at a lot of tables in this school and in this community. And those tools and that training, those dialogues simply aren't here yet. When they get here, trust me, I will go. I hope more of you can bring some to the table. But if you're not bringing that to the table, I need utensils to eat, and we don't have them.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Did you say you had another point as well?
I do, but if someone wants to speak to that, I'll be more than happy.
Okay, anyone else want to speak specifically to Resolution 7.2? Ms. Hudson?
I think that, that I've raised this issue a lot, and we talked about it at a retreat, et cetera. And thank you, Ms. Gibbs. I appreciate that. My continuing issue is that those are all, we're interesting, they sound like, relevant topics. There's no I in team. That the board hasn't identified that those are the tools, those are our priorities, that's what we want to do, that's what we're looking to achieve in terms of training or improvement for this year. As opposed to other topics, and how is that addressed in training, or what do we want to advocate, that the National Association does that would benefit us? And so, I think we go through this again and again, and you folks go, but then we don't have much that comes back. But the second thing is most importantly is we're a board, and we operate by consensus, and we should operate by planning together. And we haven't done that yet with respect to these conferences and trainings. And I would continue to encourage that we do that before we get too far out in front of our skis on going to these conferences, because they come up, and I attend professional conferences. I know what that's like, and you do get a lot out of it personally. There are other ways to do this, but I want us to all talk about it, and we're not doing that. We haven't done that, we haven't done it, and we haven't done it on this. So you've selected these various places to go, but none of us had any say in that.
Let's be fair, though. Let's be fair.
Board Member Reyes?
Let's be fair. So we keep bringing this conversation up, correct, but let's be fair about what we are prioritizing. We've been meeting about goals and priorities. We can't take a chomp of every single last thing that we have to do. And things can't stop just because we got to have a discussion about we just set goals, we set priorities, we did our mission. I mean, we're working. Let's not create a perspective that the board is not working and building consensus on certain things. So I do believe everyone's on board with what are concerns about the board budget. I mean, we are not making hundreds and thousands of dollars coming to these meetings as other elected officials make. And we do not do trips like other offices do. So I think there's a perspective when we go out there, I get asked these questions, and there's a perception that we get paid $35,000, $45,000, $85,000 salaries. I wish that's what I wanted to do. That's not why we're sitting here. And I don't want it to be assumed that all of us here are not being deliberate and focused on how we spend taxpayer taxpayer money. And we can't sit here and say that we do not need professional development and that we're not willing to make that discussion. We are willing to make the discussion. This comes up every year by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the whole board. But let's be fair and say we need to prioritize as to what each of our values, our mission, what we're tackling in each meeting that we've already scheduled. We've done a lot. We keep talking about we've done a lot. We've done the policy, we did the mission, we did the goals, we met, all of that took time. So, you know, I have no opposition. I don't think anybody at this board table has any opposition about discussing how travel is, what moves forward. But we can't sit here and say, don't go in March because we're not going to discuss, we can't possibly discuss this till February because or till April because we're currently dealing with the resolution we just talked about. So I don't want that perception to be out there that the board is not willing to have this discussion, because we are willing to make this discussion. It's just that every discussion needs to be planned, and we need to have the opportunity to do so. That's my piece.
Thank you, Board Member Reyes. Ms. Gibbs?
I just want to continually say, as we try to set calendars for all of us to meet, to get together, we are more than happy. I more than, as a representative, invite everyone, because there's a barrier there that does not exist that you perceive to be. But let's talk about where do we get the information and open to it. Let's talk about how do we get the tools we need, because this isn't a priority of what we all need to do. We all have our board priorities as set forth in both of the retreats that we've had, where we talked about our value on professional development, where we've talked about what we're going to do. But moreover, what does each member need to be effective and confident in the decisions they're going to make that's going to govern this district? And so I don't want to be the only person developing and being professionally developed, but I want every tool and resource and data available to make the best decision. Kids are dependent on me to make the best decision. So I hope and I welcome that conversation where we all can sit down and say, and this is how we're all going to learn and get that information, the ideas, and the innovation to bring back to be the best board possible.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Are there questions or comments on any other piece of legislation? Mr. Vice President?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask the superintendent if he can give some good framing and clarification around our expenditure to the Schoenbaum. I think there have been some significant things that have been set up with that. I'd love to get some more information on it.
Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Baker, to Board Member Cole. I believe our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Sandy Donald, and Nikita Smoot is going to join her to share that information.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. So we have a contract with the Schoenbaum Center. The contract covers the cost of offering pre-kindergarten services or rich early learning experiences to 20 students. Of those 20 students, 10 of the students' tuition is covered in full. The other 10, parents pay $500 monthly to recoup, and the district subsidizes the difference. I believe it's $1,073. Of the $1,073, parents pay $500. The parents that are making the payment of $500 monthly would not qualify for Early Start Columbus, Early Head Start, or any other funding stream because their salaries are 200% above the federal poverty level. So without that subsidized pre-kindergarten program, many of them would not have pre-kindergarten services at all. In addition to that, the program offers services for families from 7:30 in the morning till 5:30 in the afternoon. And that's extremely important for many parents because it erases or eradicates that convenience barrier. So they don't have to pay anything additional for wraparound services. One of the other benefits is that the program is offered for 51 weeks per year, so it's year-round. It is closed exactly 1 week out of the entire year. And again, that's huge for working families. There's no additional cost beyond what they're paying with that $500 monthly fee.
Can you also, Mr. President? Yes, Mr. Vice President. Can you also talk a bit about the professional development that is included in this piece as well?
Absolutely. So what the Memorandum of Understanding requires for the Schoenbaum Center is for us to have a coordinated professional development plan for preschool teachers. So the principal of Wyland Park, who is here, Mrs. Peoples, and the director of the Schoenbaum Center, Dr. Loris Justice, creates a collaborative professional development plan. The MOU actually calls for teachers, the pre-K teachers, to be involved in 2 different professional development opportunities, one on November 6th and one on May 13th. I would like to say that the Wyland Park staff has taken advantage of other professional development opportunities at the Schoenbaum Center. One of the charges that our team was given this year was to start the conversation early about the Memorandum of Understanding for the Schoenbaum Center. So we had a meeting with them as of last Friday. One of the things that we will be doing moving forward is their professional development opportunities will be offered not only to the pre-kindergarten staff at Wyland Park, but to any and all pre-kindergarten teachers throughout the entire district. So that is a definite win for us as a district. As we move forward with planning our neighborhood pre-K center, they too will be included with that professional development plan, as well as providers throughout the city of Columbus. So we're really looking to strengthen the partnership when it comes to educating the workforce that services our students.
Other questions from board members on this particular piece of legislation while Ms. Donnell is here?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Smoot. All right, other items of interest in the consent agenda? Board Member Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker.
Yes, ma'am.
On the 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, on the WCBE effort, I guess, Dr. Good, 2 things. One, as I understand from some of the material, all the funds associated with these resolutions are raised outside of our general funds. So have we done analysis or evaluation of just how much more we could do with the schools with WCBE? And I guess on a go forward, my concern also is what are where are there potential liabilities with it continuing to be part of the district as opposed to maybe a strategic partner that isn't part of the district?
Right. So I'm going to invite our Director of Communications to come to the podium.
President Baker, Board Member Hudson, you are correct that WCBE is a part of our greater strategic communication strategy, and we are looking for those ways in which to enhance this valuable asset that the board owns. You're also right in that the funds that will go to those 3 contracts are raised by WCBE through their efforts in what they do to raise dollars through underwriting, through membership drives. The programs that are provided by those 3 entities that you're being asked to approve tonight are actually some of those programs that are the highest rated, where ratings kind of are what generate more listeners and hopefully generate more of that revenue. To your question about looking for that liability and what WCB offers to the district, I think that we are always in a continual conversation with that organization to see what additional benefits that we can get as a district from the work that they do, but at the same time allow them to have that independence in terms of some of their news programming and what they offer.
And I think, if I could, President Baker, I would just ask, I think as we look ahead going forward, it isn't just even about programming independence, but financial, I think about it in terms of financial liability. So, say the fund drive, they thought it would bring in X, but it brings in Y. Are we responsible for that shortfall? And, but business decisions along those lines, as long as they're under our umbrella, we're responsible for that. Is there a future state that where we might have less responsibility along those lines. It's not a, it's a more rhetorical question for today, but I would just ask that that be, I would suggest that be part of the analysis. I think it would be important to consider those, options so that we could evaluate that as a board go forward.
And to President Baker and Board Member Hudson, I appreciate that. Yes, that will be something that we'll continue to look at, as well as look at those tools so that we can keep a very close eye on the budget and those dollars that come in so that we avoid any of those situations.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Thank you. And I believe Board Member Gibbs has a question on that piece of legislation.
I do. Thank you so much. And so oftentimes we are saying that we have a challenge getting our story out, or we can't get the good news out about the district. And so WCBE is a radio station with an amazing, loyal listenership. When was the last time we've looked at a new strategic plan for our communications department? Or maybe you may be in the process of it. And have we thought about how we as a district can leverage it in our communication toolbox, and how we can also have more students benefited from both an internship and a training ground for public radio? And how can we have more of our district initiatives intertwined with that media opportunity?
President Baker, to Board Member Gibbs, thank you. That is very much so a part of the strategic communications plan that's currently underway, looking for those opportunities in which that as a district we can take advantage of this incredible asset that we have. As you mentioned, 100,000 listeners weekly that they get. So I think there are great opportunities, and as we look forward into the future, finding those ways in which we can increase that value, not only in how we share our message, the good work of the district, the things that we do, but also find those ways for student internships, find those ways to get students more engaged. Students are already engaged at the station in various different ways, but looking at how we can increase that. So thank you.
Awesome. It's an incredible asset, and I know they have talk and music, but we have 109 buildings. We have so many music programs if we needed to provide music in our bands and our soloists and a lot of our ingrown or homegrown talent within the district. So for your strategic plan, well, maybe to Dr. Good, I know we have a ton of things that we're doing, but have we looked at our communications portfolio and updated it to reflect kind of like new 21st century? Social media wasn't in the old communication toolbox. It was radio, TV, and print. So what is your vision of where that goes or when that can occur?
That's a rhetorical question as
Okay.
well, and that we could present the overall strategic plan at a future meeting. I think the application alone, I think we've gone leaps and bounds in the last year under Scott Varner's leadership in communications, and we're aware of those opportunities, hearing the board's interests. We'll certainly be reflecting the full-time equivalency staffing required to execute all of these wishes, and hopefully they'll be consistent with the goals that the board has set. If they're not, we may need to revisit those goals to understand where your priorities lie. And so we continue to hear a lot of different directions the board wants to go and where you'd like us to focus our resources. So we've been honoring the goals that the board set at their retreat, and that there's a variance from that. Certainly that's what we can do, but I think we need to have that discussion separately.
Intern.
Thank you, Mr. Varner. I would say also that WCBE is celebrating 60 years this year, having started in 1956. And also WCBE helps me to be a lifelong learner because I do listen to it every single day. Any other questions or comments on any piece of legislation before us within the consent agenda? Seeing none. Mr. Treasurer? Oh, Mr. Brown, I beg your pardon.
I would like to have 7.2 separated out for purposes of voting.
You just voted against.
Just for your information, typically what board members will do will vote on the consent agenda and then note their different vote as we go along.
All right.
We haven't typically pulled them out
No
separately.
problem. Okay. No problem.
Actually, Mr. Brown, you're first up, so don't do any modeling here. But I think I probably will pick up your gist, so we'll begin with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, as to all except item 7.2, and no on that.
Thank you. Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes, except 9.3, of which I abstain. 9.3.
9.3. Ms. Hudson.
Yes, except I vote no on 7.2.
Mr. Peretti.
Yes, no on 7.2.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
And President Baker.
Yes.
And that motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on then to board announcements. Oh, I beg your pardon, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. It's my pleasure to introduce to you your most recently approved compliance officer coming to us from the Ohio Attorney General's office, Chris Caddick. Chris, you want to stand? Welcome. And then also a note of appreciation to Steve Bayless and Denise Woda for the generous donation to Colerain Elementary School.
Thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent. All right. Have we announcements or points of pride to share this evening, board members? Yes, Mr. Peretti.
I want to say that our staff is continuing to just work really, really hard on this ad hoc facilities process, and we got through our survey process, and we'll be analyzing that data this week internally. We will be going into the options process. Working at full speed. I just want to express my appreciation to the staff for the hard work they've been putting into this, especially Alex, which I don't know, there he is back there. Thank you, Alex. And we'll be discussing a timeline, which thankfully, again, the staff and the community have been very flexible on as we get into the ad hoc process in early April, as we start to discuss these options with the committee and as we go out into the community and with the board as well. Thank you. So sorry I don't have a firm date right now, just because it's in flux.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peretti. I would like to recognize Ms. Gibbs for having been honored at the Ohio School Boards Association Central Region Conference last week for 10 years service as a board member. Congratulations, Ms. Gibbs. Yes, Mr.
I
Peretti.
forgot one thing. I just wanted to recognize the Boy Scout in the front. I remember doing that when I was in Boy Scouts and went to a school board meeting actually in Kettering, Ohio, and I had no idea that I would be a school member at that point. So just wanted to recognize him and tell him thank you for coming in and observing us today.
And you still ran for school board. Any other points of pride? Yes, Ms. Reyes?
Thank you, President Baker. I just wanted to remind folks that Children's Day is April 30th. The information's on our website, and I will allow Mrs. Gillison to say any additional information.
Ms. Gillison, would you like to share?
President Baker, to Board Member Reyes, yes, we are looking forward to our April 30th National Children's Day. Our audience is all audiences. We are open to the public, and we are targeting from pre-K to adults, showcasing the best of Columbus City Schools. There will be entertainment, there will be literacy activities, there will be recreational activities, and there will be informational activities for parents and students as well, April 30th, and the information will be up on the website tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes. I'd like to thank and share that Miss Betty Hill did an awesome job working with Museum Day Live. Miss Cora Bystrick, although she was a beautiful speaker today, she worked with Miss Lynn to do an Asian fusion umbrella dance on Saturday. We also had Eastmore alumni poets and singers and the Fort Hayes String Quintet, and they all performed for some part of Museum Day Live. Our very own Cremona Reyes was there to greet the students as well as the admissions officers for Columbus College of Art and Design. well represented by our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Alicia Gillison, and other members of our staff. The Columbus City Prep for Girls Principal, Ms. Patton, was also there with her students, and it was just a wonderful day. The Columbus Museum of Art continues to be an amazing partner, and just as a reminder, it is free every Sunday from 1 to 5 for your families to visit. So we thank all of the Columbus City school staff and students that came out to support or perform during Museum Day Live, and all of the parents that joined us.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Vice President, do you have an item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to briefly acknowledge Centennial High School STEM Club for the great acknowledgement that they received as being #1 in 2015. They're defending their title this year, so we look forward to the great things that we're going to see from our STEM clubs, not only just from Centennial, but also even from Northland. So I'm excited about that. Kudos to the dispatch for acknowledging just one of the great things that comes out of our Columbus City School District. Thank you, and kudos to our young people who are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. I do have one question. Do we know when kindergarten registration begins? Let's talk about that.
So I'm going to go through a couple of dates.
Sure.
If that's all right. So first of all, a couple of important ones. One right around the corner, March 18th. It's the last day for a request to return to one's homeschool is due. Then the 31st is the deadline for the on-time applications for the elementary and middle school lottery draws. So at the end of the month would be the date for that. April 4th is when families can begin to schedule for pre-kindergarten enrollment. And we'll take the first appointment on the 6th shortly thereafter. And then we'll do lottery applications from the 6th for pre-kindergarten from the 6th through the 29th of April. All this information is available on the board's website or on the district's website. And also you can call the Division of School Choice at the 614-365-7459 number. And if you just happen to call the fact line at 221-FACT, they'll be able to give you that information there. So.
Thank you. And if you haven't already downloaded the app, make sure you do that right now while you're sitting here. It's a great resource. Anything else for the good of the order tonight? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
That motion carried.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you for being here.